No one pings you?
Yeah, no children or anything trying to
Oh,
get a hold of me. You know how they are.
oh yeah, I do. You know, my youngest daughter said, "Dad, are you going to miss me when I leave?" I said, "No." She
How
said,
can I miss you?
Dad, but I'm your favorite." I said, "Yep, and you're the last to go."
Is she 17 or what? How old is she?
Oh, this was when she was 21. Now she's
Oh,
32. I must have some Australian in me because these kids keep coming back. Like. Anyway, okay, here we go, Craig. Yes, 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 yes. All right, 15 seconds to cue. La 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 la. 10 seconds.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Doing that thing you do, breaking my heart into a million pieces, like you always do. And you don't mean to be cruel. You never even knew about the heartache I've been going through. Well, I try to forget you, girl, but it's just so hard to do. Every time you do that thing you do.
And good evening, one and all. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And we're coming to you tonight on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. If you'd like to send me an email, the email address is xzone@classic1220.ca. My first guest tonight, Exonation, is Varla Ventura, and we're going to be talking about folklore, mythology, fairy tales, paranormal history, ghosts, and we may even throw in an eclipse just for fun. She is in St. Paul, Minnesota, and joining me now is Varla Ventura. And Varla, welcome to the X Zone.
Why, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the realm of the paranormal and that thing you do.
Yeah. Well, I guess I was sort of born into it, sort of
Mhm.
raised by wolves, if you will. I grew up in a somewhat unusual environment. I didn't really think it was unusual until, much later in life.
Yeah.
But my mom is a practicing witch. I grew up in a pretty rural part of Northern California where, there's a lot of goddess ceremonies.
Hmm.
It's kind of the norm. So I was exposed to a lot of the occult arts at a very young age. On the bookshelves were Dion Fortune and Aleister Crowley and learning tarot and Sybil Leek. I remember reading Diary of a Witch when I was a teenager, and it was quite a good read. So I sort of had that as the backdrop of the things that I knew and learned just from my environment growing up. And turns out I really liked, weird stuff. And as I got older and formed my own kind of friend circle, I tended to, hang with all the weirdos. I loved hanging out in the haunted houses and, just kind of doing our own paranormal investigations. It was like the punk paranormal scene. And I think from there, I'd been a writer in my mind for quite a few years as a teenager and going into young adulthood. And then finally kind of started putting those things together and got the first book published, which is the Book of the Bizarre. And then from there, everything, which is just a bunch of strange facts and freaky trivia and a few haunting stories, and basically a grab bag of freaky trivia, which was the type of books I loved to read when I was a kid. So from there, it got better. And I think I probably got better also as a writer, and with some, different ideas and things.
Now, some of the books that you've published so far are Varla Ventura's Paranormal Parlor, Ghosts, Seances, and Tales of True Hauntings, Fairies, Pukas, and Changelings, Banshees, Werewolves, Vampires, and Other Creatures of the Night, Among the Mermaids, The Book of the Bizarre, and Beyond Bizarre. What is your favorite topic to write about? I mean, I know you love writing about the bizarre, but if you, for example, is it mermaids? Is it werewolves? Is it changelings? Is it,
Well, if I had to categorize it, so I really do love folklore, and I love all the sort of gruesome old fairy tales. And I love reading between the lines and seeing how things have been changed with translations and interpretations. So I find that all very fascinating. And sort of within that, the sort of darker side of the fairy realm, especially when you look at some of the Irish sort of lexicon of fairy and folk tales in particular. So I love reading about that. I enjoy writing about it. I just finished the manuscript for a new book, which won't be out until next year, but that's also an exploration of folklore, but it's sort of done more through the template of plants. So I've been very immersed in a lot of fairy and folklore of late, and I've enjoyed it tremendously. But I also am very interested in paranormal activity in general. I mean, I'm a kind of person who, I'll buy the America's Most Haunted, every version that anyone puts out, because I just love reading those things and visiting those places. But I'm also very interested in the paranormal arts and the sort of the history of the paranormal, and especially as it relates to women's history. I find that to be sort of an endless well, kind of constantly learning about some otherwise unknown woman that did some outrageous thing that, by today's standards still seems outrageous.
Speaking about that, women have long been associated with the psychic arts. What was the spiritualist movement, and why is it as significant for women as it was at the time?
So the spiritualist movement is the sort of religious practice, might be a little bit of a misnomer, but it's the belief that not only can you contact the dead, because of course people have been doing that for centuries and centuries, since we figured out that we're going to die. People have been trying to make contact with the other side. But spiritualism is the belief that you can contact the other side, in that they have messages for us. And so out of this is born, seances and things like that. And the spiritualist movement was really at its strongest, I would say, in the US, Canada, and the UK between 1840 and about 1840 and 1940. So it was sort of a stretch of time there, with some particular peaks. There were, and this was the belief that with the use of a medium, you could make contact with the dead and get the messages. So this is where spirit boards came into play, spirit photography, slate writing, seances, the Fox sisters and their system of knocks and rapping to get answers from the other side. These things were all part of the spiritualist movement.
Why do you think the paranormal genre is so popular in today's society?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is almost impossible to prove, and yet always there. And I think there's something perpetually, sort of infinitely fascinating about that. It's the thing out of the corner of your eye. And it's also, I mean, we can measure things, we can take EVPs and we can record things, and sometimes we catch things on film and sometimes we catch things on audio. But it's one of the few things that the tangible evidence, it isn't tangible, and it exists in the sharing of those experiences. And I think that that might be, people who have had a paranormal encounter, seen a ghost, or had, experienced a haunting in their house, it's almost like you're entered into this like cult, and you don't say anything until you find out somebody else that has seen or had an unexplained thing. Now, of course, your listeners are well versed in this, right? Because this is their area of expertise. But there is a shared fascination, but there's also something about finding out that other people have also had an experience that can't quite be quantified or proven. And I think that is what makes us forever fascinated with it.
It's like your own little association.
Yeah, it is. It's like it's the cult of the ghost. Yeah. Or they did have the Ghost Society back in the day, right?
Yes, they did.
William Butler Yeats was part of it. So.
But I mean that these people, whether it's Bigfoot, whether it's ghosts, whether it's UFOs, any part of the paranormal where you have two people who feel comfortable talking to each other, they attract others who have also had experiences or encounters. And it's not only an exchange of information, but it's also safety in numbers of a specific topic. So, what do you think?
I think absolutely. I think that comfort in knowing that somebody else doesn't know, that is actually a very big part of it, at least for me. And then the other thing that happens is, so in my personal experience, anytime I've had what I would consider a paranormal encounter, my initial thoughts in that moment aren't, oh, a ghost. Oh, I'm seeing a ghost. It's more like immediately I'm rationalizing. Oh, that must have been something else. Or there must be a window open. Something else must have knocked that over. Or that I must have just, whatever that was in the corner of my eye, I'm sure that was actually a person. So, for example, one time I was in a hotel in San Antonio, the St. Anthony Hotel, and I was staying there with my sister, and I was up on, I can't remember what floor it was, but it's the floor where you can get out to the roof garden. So it might have been the 10th floor. And we were standing on the outside, and I looked back in the hall, and I saw somebody sort of slowly cross out of what looked like a room and go into the elevator. But the person looked sort of Victorian-ish, with like a big bustle. And I thought, so I just kind of, something about it that was like, wait a second. So I go down the hall fully expecting that the person's going to be waiting at the elevator. And I was just going to be like, yeah, hey, I'm taking the elevator too. Because I wanted to see, I honestly thought it was somebody dressed up. And I was fascinated. But of course I got there and there was no one. And so my point being that my personal experience, and I think that this is fairly common, is that this rational part of us kicks in, where we are trying to figure out, is it a drip coming from the ceiling, not a cold icy finger on my forehead, that type of thing. And so once we find out that other people have also had these experiences, when we revisit those our own experiences, we know that we weren't just making it up.
Varla, I hate to cut you off, but I do have to take my first break. Exonation, Varla Ventura is our special guest. Her website is varlaventura.net, and we'll both be back on the other side as we continue talking about the world of the paranormal and science of parapsychology right here, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. until midnight on your hometown Classic Radio, Classic 1220, and streamed around the world on classic1220.ca.
Could it be? Believe it or not, it's just me.
Alrighty, let me see what we're going to play coming back here. Oh, that's a good one, Craig. All right, I see we're queued up. Excellent. Here we go. 15 seconds.
You say you wanna change the world. It's alright with me, there's no regret. It's my turn, the circle game has brought me here. And I won't let down till every sun is set. You realize now, you shouldn't try now.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone. Varla Ventura is our special guest this hour. Her website is www.varlaventura.net. Varla, why do you think in the year 2024 we still do not have any empirical, any rock solid evidence that ghosts do exist?
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on how willing you are to accept the evidence that's out there.
Right.
That certainly I've heard quite a few recorded EVPs, but I think that the proof comes from your own paranormal encounter, your own experience, and then at a certain point, people just have to either believe you or not. And I think especially in the digital age, I think perhaps things were a little more believable in the early 90s.
Yeah.
But then things changed because while there's always, it's just as with the spiritualist movement, there's always someone who's going to be doctoring an image or, making a video that doesn't, of something that isn't entirely,
Credible.
legitimate, right? There's always going to be that. And today, because so much of our correspondence is done electronically, we don't really have any way of knowing if things are manipulated. We can analyze them, but it really, for me, comes down to the story and that shared art of telling the ghost tale, telling that ghostly encounter. That is all the evidence I need personally, because I think regardless of where you kind of fall in the spectrum, like to me, the most convincing ghost stories, they always start like this. Well, I don't really believe in this kind of thing, but right. That's how they start.
Yeah, that's true.
That, or it's a dark and stormy night, right?
Or you're not going to believe this, but.
Yeah, or I don't know what to make of this. And I think, when I listen to other people telling their stories or they're sharing them with me, or I have a couple of friends that have had really very much more visceral encounters. Everything I've had has always been very kind and gentle, I guess, in a way, or intriguing, but never anything violent or anything like that. But I've had a couple of friends that have had some pretty intense experiences, and I make them tell me their stories again and again because I find it fascinating. It switches something in my brain, and I'll tell you what, Rob, this may be why I believe so much in fairies and fairy tales and this other realm, because there's something in that suspension of disbelief, the suspension of doubt, even if it's just for the duration of time while the person is telling the story, that I think it's really, I'm sure there's scientific evidence to show this, but it actually shifts something in your brain. And it shifts, you might call it your point of view, but when you're able to kind of shift that point of view to accept something that isn't necessarily concrete in front of you and kind of suspend that disbelief, that's the place where brilliant ideas come from. That's where someone says, oh, if we just tweak this molecule, it might attack the cancer cell. If you think innovatively, great things can happen. And so in order to think in an innovative fashion, you have to suspend doubt. And I think that there's something very unifying about that suspension of doubt within fairy tales, within the stories of the parent. I'm not equating the two. I'm not saying a ghost story is the same thing as a fairy tale, but there is this other realm that you enter, and I think that in itself can really be transformative, and maybe that's what we're addicted to. I don't know.
Tell me about fairies. Are there good fairies, bad fairies, or leprechauns fairies? How do we differentiate a fairy from a leprechaun or any other little devil that runs through the woods or knocks over your gardening equipment or takes the pies off the shelf? Oh, wait a minute, that's my brother. Okay, well, let's just stick to the fairies.
He could be a changeling. You never know.
He could be a lot of things.
So, yeah, just to sort of back up, like the fairy, when I say fairy, I am not just talking about a little, garden elf that flits from flower to flower. Kind of talking about this whole other realm, also known as the other world, in which these sort of supernatural creatures exist that can also show themselves occasionally in our world. It's sometimes been described as sort of a parallel dimension. I think of it more as simple layers. But if you look, for example, at the Irish kind of fairy taxonomy, I guess, of like how you would qualify what falls under the kingdom of fairy, you have the fairy kingdom, or the fae, or the good people, and then within that you have all of the sort of sub classes. You've got the woodland dwelling fairies. Mermaids are actually the Murrow are fairies. You've got banshees, which kind of straddle the world between the ghostly realm and the fairy realm, and they're the ones that sort of warn you of impending doom or death. You got changelings, which are fairy babies that are switched for humans, and vice versa. So a fairy child that's been raised in the human world. You got pukas who shapeshift and trip you up as you're, stumbling home from the pub one night. You've got leprechauns certainly fall in there, and there's quite a few interesting stories about leprechauns that sort of, they don't conflict with sort of the stereotype that we have, but they certainly are much more complex creatures than that kind of stereotype that we see around St. Patrick's Day. They dwell in the forest, they're solitary, they are cobblers. They actually don't wear green, they wear red, and frequently are also called red, equated with the red caps, which is another classification of fairy. And leprechauns are actually they kind of keep to themselves, and they do actually, they do usually keep a goodly amount of treasure somewhere, but they're really good at tricking humans, which is the kind of legend that we know, the elusive pot of gold you'll never get.
So the fairies that we most often associate with are the fairies with the wings, like Tinkerbell. Has there ever been any documentation that, besides folklore and besides, stories, where these little fairies actually do exist?
I've seen a few videos that I've seen over the last, I'd say, 5 years. One was very convincing to me, although I didn't spend a ton of time trying to pick it apart. Like I said, I always take the video evidence these days with a big grain of salt.
Yeah.
But I think the evidence that I've seen, or outside of folklore, are people telling me about things that have changed in their garden after creating an offering, or things that had gone missing in their house, and they create an offering to the fairies and kind of leave them something else shiny as a switch, and in return suddenly that missing earring or that key has been returned. So there's been a few instances like that where, and that's actually even happened to me where, it's like, okay, I can't look for this anymore. I'm just gonna leave it to the tricksters and see if they'll return it if I acknowledge and leave this offering. And it's worked.
Really?
Now, it's entirely possible that, it was my son playing a trick on me, but I think he was a little young at the time. But it has worked. Yeah. And the thing is it wasn't instantaneous. It's not like I walked up to the little altar and the earring was there. Actually, what happened, it was a necklace. What happened is I said, I really, really want this back. You can keep the chain. I just want the pendant. And I left a different necklace in exchange. And I was, looked the next day. I would just set it up on my little altar in my office. And I looked the next day, nothing there. And I was like, okay, fine. But the following day, I found the necklace, but it was right in the middle of the carpet in a different room. And I thought, okay, I can't explain that. I don't really want to explain that. And I'm probably a little afraid to explain that. But here's the necklace. I really don't think it was my son because, as I say, he was very young at the time and he didn't really know that I had done that because I do all those things in secret, like any good witch.
What is the difference between a witch and a Wiccan?
So a Wiccan is sort of a modern, so a witch can be a Wiccan and a Wiccan can be a witch, but not all witches are Wiccan. So Wiccan is basically a subset of witchcraft. It's often based on some of the, like the Celtic Wheel of the Year. It's usually an amalgamation of many different goddesses and gods and religious practices, kind of from the ancients, sort of distilled into a more modern practice. But you have lots and lots of witches. You've got the Alexandrian witches who are initiates. You've got people who are consider themselves kitchen witches. You've got the Cabot witches who have studied with Laurie Cabot in Salem. So there's a lot of different sort of subsects of witchcraft in which people would identify themselves as witches. And then there's a lot of people who identify as witches who aren't necessarily doing something formal. They just sort of have a strong knowledge of herbology and have been known to hex when needed. I would put my mom in that category.
You and I have to take our next break, so please stand by.
Beautiful.
Really nice talking to you. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us tonight. Exonation, Varla Ventura is our special guest, and her website is varlaventura.net, and we'll both be back on the other side of the short break as the X-Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And you're listening to us on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streaming around the world, even to where all the little fairies live, on classic1220.ca.
You say you wanna change the world. It's alright with me, there's no regret. It's my turn, the circle game has brought me here. And I won't let down till every sun is set. You realize now, you shouldn't try now. Ooh, the music's gone now. You lost it somehow. Hey you, sha-la-la-la. Hey you, sha-la-la-la.
Alrighty, just give us a sec here. I'm doing that right now, Craig. Now, where the heck did I just put it? Oh, there it is. All right, here we go. 15 seconds.
Emergency.
This is Elijah.
What?
Elijah, you know Elijah?
No, I don't.
Well, they know me down at the police station.
Well, hey, why does that keep beeping like that?
It's on a recording.
Oh, hey, a recording. That's great. I'm being recorded?
Yes, sir.
Hey, that's great. I want everybody to hear about me. Pretty soon I'll be world famous.
That's the truth.
I'm going to Jerusalem pretty soon. God's going to take me his way, a spaceship. UFO, you better believe it. They're everywhere. Everybody has seen, millions of people have seen them all around the world.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, that's right. And God bless the police officers and the scientists and the ordinary people that talk about these UFOs, so they do exist, and I know all about them. I'm a ufologist. I'm the #1 scientist on this planet. I'm an authority on them. I'm a scientist.
Okay.
Yeah, you heard of Albert Einstein?
No, but I'm going to have to go. I got other
Well, I can explain it to you. His formula of relativity.
Well, I don't have time to hear Einstein's theory of relativity.
But it's very simple. E does equal MC squared.
That's right.
Okay, Emmanuel equals the Messiah coming the second time. It's elementary, my dear Watson. Einstein was a Jew, and I'm a Jew, and very few people in the world understood him. That's right. I'm an engineer, I'm an electrician, a plumber, everything. I can do anything.
Well, that's wonderful.
And I'm the world's greatest entertainer.
Well,
I'm worth about $50 million a year.
Elijah, I got to go now.
Okay. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, I just got back from Roswell, where the aliens have been. And if you ask the feds the cause, well, they'll only lie again. Now I'm hunted by the gumshoes, and I'm wanted by the cops, 'cause they think that I might be the guy making circles in the crops. And I know that there's a conspiracy from the voices in my head. Elvis lives, that's clear to me. It's McCartney who is dead. And if the Mars man should come again and take me, I will go. I will take a trip on their rocket ship. God bless the UFO. Give JFK this message. It's the Cuban Army's fault. And I know that Dave Koresh is alive inside a vault. We've seen reports in papers of a guy who knows about a car that runs on chewing gum, but the Arabs rubbed him out. And we loudly warn that America is badly unprepared. With the Cold War through, we need something new that can get you good and scared. Do you wonder just who is warning you of conspiracies today? We're the ones who fill the rumor mill. We are the CIA.
And welcome back to the X Zone. Varla Ventura is our Varla Ventura is our special guest this hour. VarlaVentura.net is her website. Varla, a lot of people have difficulties with Ouija boards because they're sold in toy stores, and yet they're supposed to be all powerful plus. What is your take on a Ouija board?
Well, my own first exposure to a Ouija board was as a kid, with it, which probably no surprise by now, with one of those Parker Brothers Ouija boards that were real popular in the 80s. Thought it was Monopoly under the Christmas tree, and then opened it up and discovered that it was actually something that could open a portal to another dimension.
You see, a Monopoly can't do that.
So I have had mixed experiences with the Ouija board. I think the thing that we lose sight of is it's a conduit, and it's a tool to make contact with spirit, with something that you can't see, whether that's something from, some kind of entity, or it's a ghost, or whatever you want to call it. I think the issue with the Ouija boards is not so much the Ouija boards, it's that the prevalence of them allows for people to do what is really truly ceremonial and sacred work on a whim. And that's where you run into trouble. There's nobody's casting a protection circle. Nobody's making sure that the portal is closed. You're just kids goofing off on a sleepover. And so I think that that is kind of of course we have all of these movies that have the Ouija board as the sort of portal. I think it is I think one of the things that's particularly creepy about the Ouija board for many people is the fact that it actually has language on it. So there's something about this oracle that actually goes and it says yes, no, rather than if you see somebody doing automatic writing, you can kind of tell yourself, oh, okay, we can't really read what they're writing. It's very messy, or it's just a very visceral psychic connection, and it's difficult for people to keep their hands off of it. Everyone wants to just see what would happen. I don't believe in this, but let me just see what happens. Will this planchet move? So I think there's something, it's not don't blame the board, right? It's the users of the board. But it is a very powerful tool that you can use to connect. I just think that when you're talking about working with something that is potentially the spirit of a dead person, now you're getting into necromancy, and that is really high level magical work. And to do that irresponsibly, which is people do every day, that's where I think you can kind of run into some trouble.
Before we went to the break, you were just talking about hexes and witchcraft. I had to get us back there because I've often wondered, are hexes real or is it mind over matter?
Who, me talking about hexes?
No,
I wouldn't.
I didn't think you would, so I was just going to ask you for your expert opinion.
Yeah, no, of course. I absolutely believe in hexes. And the thing about hexes or blessings or any kind of magic, in my opinion, is that it is very much mind over matter. That is sort of the crux of magic. It's, again, we get back to that suspension of doubt, that suspension of disbelief, and the sort of ritual application of intention. That's really magic, is intention. And so some people don't call it magic. They call it the power of intention, or they call it, the power of thought or positive thinking, or I suppose negative thinking. But I think it's that intention that goes into it, and the idea that you're putting something out there that kind of comes back in some way. And as many hexes that have been successful, 3 times as many have failed, right? I mean, I think that's true probably of most magical work. If something you're asking for something, you're putting your intention into it, it's always kind of there's a gray area there of whether or not you're getting exactly what you want. And I think different times of year you have more likelihood. People's mental states and what's going on in their lives and their attitudes, all these things all affect whether or not something actually transpires. And so I think with hexes, now there's also the idea of, a more permanent hex or like a curse where somebody might put a hex on someone and it kind of hovers around them and it brings them ill luck for years. I have never met anyone that has blamed their ill luck solely on a hex. However, I have encountered a couple of people who believe that somebody had bewitched them. And, I mean, it's kind of, again, one of those impossible to prove or disprove. And if you really think somebody's hexed you, then you should probably consult an expert and figure out how to undo that. Just in case.
Yeah. Why did witches get such a bad rap? The Hansel and Gretel, for one example, or Halloween, you get all these ridiculous looking witches that are flying on brooms, and the cauldron, the pointed hat, and it seems that marketing certainly has diminished the actual aspect of witches. And I think that witches have a lot more to offer when it comes to Mother Earth and, you know, the herbs that they use in their elixirs and so on. Why the bad rap? Like, why the persecution going back down to the witch trials?
Yeah, well, I agree. Witches have by nature, the primarily women, but also some men, and were healers. They were usually the person that had a very extensive knowledge of plants and were very in tune with the seasons and the animals. They were the people that could be gone to for ailments. But remember too, when you take yourself back to, for example, the 1400s, the Middle Ages in Europe,
Right.
There was not a huge separation between what was spiritually wrong with you and what was medically wrong with you. There were many, many things that were thought to tie in. And so as more knowledge about medicine and how it affects the body, a lot of these methods have been proven to be 100% on the nose. Yes, that is an antibiotic. Yes, that does staunch wounds. So, but you have a couple of things happening. You have the Roman Catholic Church sort of trying to put its doctrine everywhere. And part of that also was the sort of the taxation where you would be paying the land and the goods. And this was happening also with the Church of England taking over land and taking over property in the name of the king, and then who was, of course, the one true earthly representative of the church and God on earth. So that perception that what's out there should really belong to the church, that became fuel for what we think of maybe as the stereotypical witch, the little old lady with the gray hair. This was the woman who was the wise woman, and she also maybe had some land that they wanted, or she was the one who wouldn't bow to the church. And so the easiest way to get rid of someone when they don't want to or against their will is to call them a witch.
All right, stand by. We've got to take our final break. And Exonation, Varla Ventura is our special guest this hour. www.varlaventura.net. Yeah. Wow. Witches.
Flying
Fairies.
by.
Boom, there goes one now. We'll be back on the other side as we wrap up the first hour of tonight's show here in the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streaming classic1220.ca. Wow, this hour's gone by very fast.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we have I wasn't kidding when I filled out that questionnaire and I was like, ask me anything.
We'll have to get you back on in the future if you don't mind.
I would absolutely love that.
Super.
Yeah, you're a delight to talk to.
Oh, thank you so much.
Easy peasy.
Oh my gosh. You know, I never heard that saying until I met my wife. And now I hear it all the time.
I like your wife.
Yeah.
I want to go to Costco with her.
Oh my God. Well, you're St. Paul. Okay, I'm safe. She's a retired nurse, and we've got 6 children, 15 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's another reason why I hate Costco at Christmas time.
You know, the thing about Costco, it's such a trap because you don't really need a 20-pack of granola bars, but you need some granola bars.
Yeah.
And so, like, the next thing you know, everything's in a 20-pack. And
Yeah.
so it's just like that's the trap because you can't just buy a small amount. And so if there's certain things that you go there regularly, but of course, every time you go, you got to check out the gardening and you got to check out the patio furniture, then you got to see what they have in the clothing and the books, and it's just
Yep.
like it's not always the same thing.
My favorite thing in Costco is their hot dog and their soft drink for $1.50.
That's what you do while she's loading up the cart.
No, I'm pushing the cart, damn it. Okay, stand by, and thanks again. I'll send you the links, and look forward to the next time you join us here for an hour.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Stand by, please. All right, Craig, how are we doing there, buddy? Okay, I'm ready. 15, thanks, Craig.
Do you believe in magic in a young girl's heart? How the music can free her whenever it starts, and it's magic. If the music is groovy and makes you feel happy like an old-time movie, I'll tell you about the magic and it'll free your soul. But it's like trying to tell a stranger about a rock and roll. If you believe in magic, don't bother to choose if it's such a
And welcome back, everyone. Do you believe in magic? I do. My favorite topic of all times is everyone knows who's listened to the show over the past 34 years. Angels. I am just taken back by angels. I don't know if it's because I love Christmas so much and the angel on top of the Christmas tree. I don't know, but I love angels and I believe. So there we go. Mermaids. I saw something here on the information that you sent us that are mermaids considered fairies?
Yes, mermaids are considered fairies. They, among a few other creatures, are sort of that hybrid water fairy. There's a few others that live in lakes and sort of counterparts, but they absolutely are considered fairies, and they do have quite a few trickster elements. In fact, the way that fairies are believed to, people often ask me, Rob, why can't we see fairies? Like, why is it just like only a few people have seen them? And that's because fairies have the ability to go invisible. It's believed that Manon MacLear, who is the son of the sea god in Celtic mythology, gave the fairies a cloaking an invisible cloak, a magical cloak that allowed them to go invisible and only show themselves when they felt safe or comfortable. And this is in part because in the Celtic mythology, the fairies were actually sort of driven underground by another supernatural race that came to Ireland. And they, rather than leave, Manon MacLear gave them this gift of invisibility. And so the connection to the sea and the fog that might surround you is considered to be part of that cloak of invisibility. And among the fairy creatures, the Murrow and the other magical creatures of the sea are considered to be in his domain.
Where did is there a difference between a mermaid and a siren, or are they both the same?
There is a difference, although we frequently use the terms interchangeably now. They have some similar characteristics. Both have the ability to sing and sort of lure sailors or people out to sea, or perhaps away from danger, not always into imminent danger. Sirens are usually winged, and they're usually half woman, half beast, and they live near the sea. They're frequently perched on rocks. In the Odyssey, the sirens sing, and they sort of deflect the sound of their voices off the rocks, and it can be very confusing, especially if the cloak of invisibility is out nice and thick that night. And then a mermaid, of course, has the beautiful siren-like voice. They'll sing. They can sometimes lead you onto rocks. They can sometimes lead you out to open waters. But they both have this sort of enchanting song that will put you into a little bit of a trance and possibly make you jump overboard.
Where was the first mythology ever talked about, or where is the first historical incidence of mythology? Is it with Greek mythology?
With mermaids.
Really?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think it's the very first. I don't know if mermaids are the very 1st mythological being ever, but there are some very, very old accounts of an Assyrian goddess who accidentally killed a mortal, and she hid herself. Her name was Atargatis, and she hid herself in a lake. She was so ashamed that she had killed this mortal that she loved. This is the story, and but that wasn't enough because people could still see her. So then she transformed herself to be half fish. Now that was freshwater, but that's one of the first sort of recorded stories of mermaids. But I think as far as mythology goes, and I do have a little bit of a background in anthropology, which is probably why I sort of go a little bit down the philosophical route with it. But I feel as though as soon as we understood that death was this unknown void and that people weren't coming back to life, we began to create or determine what had created us.
You know,
So-
it's funny that you're talking about that, because I was talking to my wife earlier this afternoon, and we were discussing mortality. And there's one part of the Bible that says, and during the second coming, Christ is supposed to come down, and all the dead will rise from their graves. And I said, yeah, that's right. And she says, well, what happens if the person has been cremated and their ashes have been tossed to the wind? I had to scratch my head and say, I don't know.
Well, I think you can still rise from the dead, right? I mean, you just maybe aren't coming right from a very specific spot. But once you're dead, if you believe that your body, is just the vehicle, and your spirit goes to wherever you believe. If you believe it's heaven, if you believe it's roaming around on earth, rattling chains, or you believe in reincarnation, what happens to your body is sort of, at that point would be, I guess it would be irrelevant.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's so many different religious beliefs surrounding that, and how you treat the body being a huge part of the success in the afterlife. I mean, look at the Egyptians.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a very elaborate ceremony.
They had all
right?
all
and
those.
Some of the best stuff was buried with you.
All those mummies and no daddies. Away you go. What is your take on reincarnation, since you brought it up?
I believe in reincarnation. I think I can blame my mom for that. That could be a T-shirt. I blame my mom.
I was going to say, my gosh, you blame your mom for a lot.
But I think she kind of talked to me about reincarnation at a very young age. I mean, reincarnation, for one thing, like on the very logical side, it can be a very comforting thought, because the belief that the spirit goes on is incredibly comforting, especially when you've suffered loss and you're mourning. I don't know that everybody gets reincarnated. I think some people are just done, right? They're just done, and they can just go do their thing. But I find it really interesting, and I love the idea of the sort of endless possibilities, and that you get this. So you kind of get 8 times to do it over or something like that, and see if you can get it right. But then, have you ever met an animal or even a bird or something that really reminded you of a person, or that showed up right at a very strange time when you were thinking of this person? It's a very interesting concept, reincarnation.
Yeah, well, there was that time in the bar in Mexico. Oh, that's the wrong story.
That was the worm.
Oh, God. I was the worm in the tequila bottle. Thanks a lot. I've spoken to so many people over the years about reincarnation, and you get the person who says, "Oh, you come back 800-900 times," and I'm saying, "No wonder I'm so damn tired. Why don't I just get it right?" Yeah. And then I have to wonder, well, when you die and you shed your meat suit, and you go to wherever spirits go, and you have your debriefing session, and then you can either take another mission to learn something else, or you can, grab your harp and find a cloud somewhere.
Well, there's an interesting idea, though. Is there a choice?
Yes.
Do we have that choice? That's a wonderful thing to ponder.
Yeah. Apparently, we have our choice of free will, whatever we do in life. And I kind of have a little bit of a problem with that. Honestly, officer, I was listening to this radio show the other day, and this guy named Rob was telling us that we have free will, that we can do whatever we want. What do you mean I've got to put the money back? Oh. I guess it's how you look at it and how you want to interpret it and where your belief lies.
That's probably why we do need to cling to some kind of, and why spiritualism became such a huge movement, especially in the U.S. post-Civil War, because you had mass casualties and you were trying to make sense of it somehow. And so that trying to figure it out beyond just accepting, what you learned in Sunday school, really kind of trying to go beyond that. That pursuit of that has really kind of kept that spiritualist movement, or that concept, going amongst those of us who are so fascinated by these kind of questions: the paranormal, what does happen, and then why ghosts? Like, what's a ghost? And are there different kinds of ghosts? And are they a glitch between the incarnations? Just sort of like it's infinite, but it's also incredibly interesting.
It is. This is the point of the show where I ask our guests to just let our listening audience know what you'd like them to know, and you've got a minute to do that.
Okay, well, you can, I know you plugged my website. You can find my books everywhere that books are sold, varlaventura.net. I've also got a little podcast series that I started called Midnight Stories with Varla Ventura, and that's little tales of amazing women of the paranormal, strange plants and folklore, whatever little stories I've come up with to kind of keep you awake at night. And other than that, you can just find me out there, and I so appreciate you having me and your audience for listening, and it's been lovely.
Well, we're going to have you back on because I still have so many questions to ask you.
Sounds great.
And I love your attitude, and your vibes are great. So thank you very much for joining us. And one more time, give out your contact information, please.
Yeah, that's varlaventura.net. So that's with V's, Varla Ventura. And then you can also just find me under that name on all the socials.
Varla, thank you so much for joining us. Take care of yourself.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, Exo Nation, that was Varla Ventura. What a guest. I thoroughly enjoyed this hour, and it goes by so fast when you have a guest who comes on. You can feel the energy, the positivity, and she knows the answers to the questions. That makes it all worthwhile. I'll be back on the other side of the top of the hour as the X Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell. Right, yep, you know this from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on your hometown radio 1220, and streaming around the world on, yeah, that's right. What is it? Classic1220.ca. Yay, you've got it, gang. We'll be back. Don't go away.
I'll tell you about the magic and the free your soul, but it's like